ovary on a monthly cycle. Let's take a look at what occurs in the uterus on that same monthly cycle. So maybe that's something to pay attention to here, right? If we have that ovarian cycle, and we said was from day 0 to day 28, right? Right down the middle, day 14 was ovulation, and our two phases, follicular and luteal. If we want to understand what goes on at the uterus, we have to remember which hormones are being produced then in the ovary, right? So in the follicular phase, it was estrogen that developing follicle is producing, and in the luteal phase, it was the corpus luteum producing progesterone. Okay. These two hormones are going to influence the functioning of the uterus. So if we zoom in here on the uterus, right, this is quite zoomed in, right? This kind of purple area they're marking here is what's called the endometrium. The endometrium is this layer. Look at this rich blood supply coming out here. We have all sorts of glands, right? These uterine glands are producing this glycoprotein-rich mucus that's going to be important if implantation does occur. The endometrium then is also this layer that is shed monthly during menstruation. Okay. Here we can see the histology of it, right? So the endometrium, it's really like the functional zone on out that's shed. We keep a little bit of the endometrium, right? The outer tissue then is the myometrium. And the myometrium, myo means muscle. This is just going to be the smooth muscle that's used for contractions, right? Whether that's to expel the baby or to expel that endometrial lining, which is why some women are going to get cramps during that menstrual cycle. Okay? So if we look at then the uterine cycle, it very much matches what's going on in the ovary. So it's that same 28-day cycle, right? And we said at the beginning is menses, right? Again, menses is the loss of that endometrial lining. And that actually happens because these spiral arteries that are feeding the endometrium actually constrict, cutting off blood supply and nutrients to that endometrium, and so it dies. So we'll say constriction or constrict the spiral arteries. Right? That's what's causing the loss of the endometrium. So menses can last anywhere from 3 to 7 or so days, but we still then have another week, 10 days, something like that, to be in what's called the proliferative phase. Okay. So again, maybe I should have written that over a little further. You have menstruation and then the proliferative phase. In the proliferative phase, what we need to have happen is essentially to rebuild the endometrium. So what happens is the epithelial cells that have been lost are going to rebuild. They proliferate, they undergo rapid mitosis and recover the inside of the uterus. This is getting really messy. Let's see. Put it down here, proliferative. Right, we need to rebuild the endometrium. And so that epithelium divides and grows and recovers the inside of the uterus. Right? And so we're rebuilding the endometrium. The second half of the month now becomes dominated by progesterone, and that causes us to enter the secretory phase, as in secretion. So these uterine glands that have been shed and now rebuilt, these uterine glands are going to become more active. So they increase their activity. Again, that's making this glycogen-rich mucus that's lining the uterus and is going to be important in implantation. If pregnancy occurs, we hold on to the endometrium, right? Progesterone actually keeps getting produced by the corpus luteum if pregnancy takes place. But if there's a failure of fertilization, remember the corpus luteum scars over, becomes the corpus albicans, and we move back to this estrogen-dominated proliferative phase. So we enter menstruation, and then the proliferative phase and the secretory phase.